Good day, everyone. We are Group 1, and today we'll be discussing Reading 11, which is Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche writes about his views on morality and ethics. Specifically, he talks about how he finds the study of morality tedious, exacerbated by the way philosophers espouse their views. He believes that the discussions on morals remain as uninteresting as possible, so that only a few people will discuss it. A belief in morality, in his view, is something that holds back people from achieving the best life possible. Nietzsche states that morality is not life enhancing and prevents people from attaining the highest power and splendor of human life. This is a very different view on ethics and morality from what we have discussed so far in this course. While past readings involve different beliefs in morality and ethics and how one should act morally, Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil states that morality is unimportant and even dangerous. In Nietzsche's eyes, moralists are flawed, and that calamity will come for those that put emphasis in moral thinking. English morality, specifically, is something that Nietzsche attacks, as he believes that moralists want English morality to be applied to everyone. They believe that to strive for English happiness is the same as striving for virtue. This English morality is also known to us as utilitarianism. It is because a lot of utilitarians were English at the time. Nietzsche does not believe in morality not because it relies on false claims, but because it is inherently bad for humans. This thinking seems to be influenced by the dominance of England at the times and the way they impose their values at the surrounding nations, not just in Europe but also worldwide. Nietzsche further states that these moralists refuse to learn that general welfare cannot be grasped, and what might be fair for one will not be fair for others. Having one morality that applies to all, to the general public, will only pull down men from achieving the highest possible level. Nietzsche attacks the utilitarians, calling them mediocre men. This is because of the utilitarian belief of putting everyone on the same consideration regarding your decisions. Because you cannot put your own need above others, this runs contrary to Nietzsche's belief of achieving higher excellence for yourself. In his point of view, then, utilitarianism is just needlessly handicapping your own life for the lives of others, and that this is not fair for you. You could say that Nietzsche was an individualist when it comes to philosophy. However, it is not only English morality that we will see Nietzsche attack, which we will learn more about later. Nietzsche also talks about the pathos of distance, what he calls the difference in the ranks between men such as master and slave, and the downlooking of the ruling caste to the working caste, and how it is important so that humans could get the longing to widen the distance within the soul itself. In other words, the elevation of the type of man one could be. However, he also says that one should not be under the illusion that the history of our aristocratic society is a humanitarian one. Humans are barbarians, and that the strong always prey on the weak. The noble castes are also the barbarian castes that attack those that they perceive to be weaker, and thus he believed that they were more complete men because of their superiority. Good conduct emerges when there is a wish to refrain from mutual injury and violence. However, Nietzsche believes that when this principle of good conduct is taken generally on a more fundamental level, like a universal ethics, it reveals immediately that good conduct denies a will to life. Why? He states that life itself is conquest and exploitation of the weak, injury, and suppression. Societies that may appear to have good conduct within themselves will conquer and exploit other societies and do unto others what they do not do within themselves. That is how life is, according to Nietzsche. He attacks the current European thinking of the need to lose this exploiting character from men. We can see from this thinking of Nietzsche that he placed self above all. According to him, exploitation is simply natural to life. Based on this thinking, it is not surprising to see that many modern thinkers consider Nietzsche to be a proto-fascist, forming the base ideas of a fascist society, especially of Nazi Germany. The will to get power is the same as the will to life, according to him. He then discusses that through studying the many moralities that have prevailed, he discovered that it can be categorized into two types: master morality and slave morality. While there have been many attempts by societies to reconcile the two, it is still more often that there is mutual misunderstanding between the both types. He posits that morality either originated from the ruling caste or the ruled caste. The ruling caste can be the kings or the business owners, and the ruled caste could be slaves or the working class. When the ruling class dictates morality, pride and exaltation is regarded as the determinant of your rank. Nobles separate themselves from the lesser man and despise the lower classes. This is how you should show your pride and exaltation. In this type of morality, good and bad is practically the same as being noble and being despicable. If you are nobility, you are a good person, while being timid, cowardly, and insignificant means you are despised.
As CJ stated earlier, Nietzsche categorizes morality into two distinct types, master morality and slave morality. He describes the virtues of master morality, including qualities like courage, honor, pride, and self-worth. Just like a master is to a slave, those who favor the master morality are those who are powerful and believe that they are superior to others because of the power that they have. He suggests that individuals following this morality see themselves as creators and determiners of values. They value things like wealth, glory, ambition, and excellence, and they act without concern for others' disapproval. They help the less fortunate not out of kindness, but rather due to having a superabundance of power. Basically, this morality is an extreme form of self-glorification because it emphasizes one's personal worth, excellence, and power, often at the expense of individuals of the lower class. Those who are noble or those who follow the master morality do not align themselves with the conventional values of sympathy and selflessness. Next slide. So a group that comes to mind when talking about master morality are the Nazis. There are similarities between the ideologies of the Nazis and the characteristics associated with master morality, in a sense that the Nazis believed in themselves being a master race and that they had the right to terrorize and dominate others because they are a superior human that can do whatever they want because they are powerful. Personally, I believe that master morality is a problematic way to approach ethics, as it promotes the idea that the ruling class is the sole determinant of whether an action is moral or not, and that any form of opposition is made purely out of resentment of their power. Next. So on the other hand, we have slave morality. Slave morality stemmed as a reaction to the dominance of the masters, so it was created in direct contrast to master morality. Nietzsche states that those who have experienced hardship and suffering tend to develop a negative view on the world, or as you may call pessimistic. So they may become skeptical about the fairness of society, the intentions of those in power, and the way that things are structured. Like a slave is to a master, those who follow the slave morality may have an unfavorable eye for the virtues of the powerful, so they resent the power that the masters possess. This resentment is a central element of slave morality and is born out of the reaction to the dominance of the ruling or master class. Sympathy, kindness, patience, diligence, and humility are qualities that are most useful to these individuals as they alleviate the burden that existence brings. As opposed to master morality, wherein aristocrats or people in power are viewed as good and an embodiment of masterly virtues, those in power are viewed as evil in the context of slave morality, as they perpetuate inequality and oppression. Next. This mentality is still apparent in today's society, especially in social media with terms such as eat the rich, which exhibits the distaste of the general public towards billionaires and large corporations. Based on power and wealth, these groups would typically be on top of the social pyramid. However, their power and wealth is the exact reason why they are disliked by the public. Slave mentality is observed in the way that the masses, especially the lower classes, view the mega rich as selfish and exploitative, and that their actions all have ill intentions, thus they are immoral. Next. So Nietzsche moves on from the topic of morality and begins to explore the idea that no one is responsible for our inherent qualities and existence. So he rejects the notion of a purpose and claims that humans merely invented the concept. So he states that we are an integral part of the entire universe and that there is no external entity to judge, measure, compare, or sentence our existence, as this would require evaluating the whole of existence itself. Nietzsche also rejects the concept of God and the associated idea of responsibility, and suggests that true liberation and innocence come when we acknowledge that our existence is not bound by a higher purpose or divine plan.
He considered Christianity an offense to the discussion of morality, finding it to be the greatest and most impious lie. He deemed most, if not all, parts of it to be deceitful. A community's set of virtues should not be determined by the moralities of the few and should not be hidden behind the name of God to urge others into following one set of values. The concept of being beholden to the rules set by a group that condemns and guilts, despite being, according to Nietzsche, unfit to do so, should be discarded. He often urged the reader and others to fully reject such notions. Christianity has a way of weaponizing one's emotion and guilts those witnessing it into following the set of rules it or the one preaching it wants others to adhere to. Large issues and complicated concepts are simply boiled down to worshiping God and condemning everything outside it. In a Christian society that we currently have, we can definitely see some of what Nietzsche is referring to in real life. It is not all churches that do such things, but in some masses I've attended to, I've definitely noticed how they would pander to the churchgoers' fears and troubles, heightening it. After this, it immediately promises to alleviate all of such fears that they brought up with the word of God and how he is able to take all troubles away so long as they would follow each and every one of his word. Oftentimes, the preachings were not related to the word of God and most likely were just opinions of the preacher. Nietzsche wrote about how he abhorred such when man would veil his words with the name of God and preach it as the one true measure of all. He noted that those who did should be sent to mental asylums. Communities do not condemn violence and cruelties, but they do if it is directed towards others within the community. When enemies arise, these cruelties are necessary to cultivate in order to get rid of their opponents. This is what Nietzsche described as how a natural community would act before Christianity. Christianity discourages such assets by claiming that neither action nor its result matters, as God sees into the heart that one should always be good, in mind and in deed. This seemed to arise in communities that didn't really have the need to have warlike characters and often created issues when the religion was practiced in communities that did not need to have warriors. By emasculating the virtues one follows, the moralities completely reject nature, according to Nietzsche. Instead of attacking what attacks and loving what needs to be kept close, Christianity tells us to love thy neighbor and thy enemies. Once wholly integrated into community, physical means are no longer part of the equation, thus giving rise to more psychological forms of attacks. Nietzsche refers to this as the spiritual war, which he dissects into six recipes. First, by slandering the old values, the new values now center one's ideals. This means that all of the old is rejected and that everything that was part of the old value system is deemed immoral. Second, one's values become part of anything and everything. It becomes God as the values become tied to the name of God. As it is God, it shall be followed. Third, anyone who opposes these ideals are then opponents of God, which shall be sundered, for those who shall defy God are only those who are immoral. Fourth, one's misfortunes are no longer just misfortunes, but God's way of punishing you. You are the reason for your suffering, and your disbelief or your immorality is why you are suffering. Fifth, nature itself is considered to be the opposite of one's ideals. Following it would be immoral, therefore one must sacrifice their natures in order to follow the ideals truly. The more of one's nature is sacrificed, the more virtuous they become. And lastly, the sixth, when all have truly rejected anything against the ideals, rejected anything from nature, we will be blessed with heaven, or as Christianity calls, the kingdom of God. Once we become His word, we will become part of His greater world. When put in this way, it is very easy to understand Nietzsche's frustrations. It is extremely divisive and alienating, which is most likely part of the process when trying to find those to follow the Christian word. Its extreme rigidity would likely lead to many going outside its virtues, leading to shame, which in turn would lead those shame to have further dependence on the virtues of Christianity. Nietzsche then went on to touch on the things the ancient philosophers did not expand upon: the theory of non-free will, the typical feature of happiness, and the regarding of virtue as a result of immorality in service of a species. This was likely because doing so would break the foundations of the moral discussions at the time. Regardless, it was irrelevant in Nietzsche's conclusion. He claimed that in all discussions of morality, none of it had ever been based on truth and logic, and were instead held by sophisms and based in fiction. These philosophers were regarded to be speaking of opinions and dressed their arguments in a way as to elevate it above simpler reasonings. The sophists grouping of different values and moralities together was considered to be against the rules of morals in Nietzsche's eyes, as it made it seem that different values were equivalent to another regardless of its apparent moral weight. He further expounded that the sophists considered all values to be sophistical, meaning that it seems sound and true, yet is deceptive and likely misleading, that there isn't one primary truth, and that you cannot speak of truth in such a definitive matter. Such was concluded from the obstruction of virtues, where oneself is separated from the world in an attempt to make their moralities truly logical, despite it being impossible according to Nietzsche. He expands on it in his other works, where moralities will always be emotional, as those discussing such moralities are human and are therefore emotional. Overall, Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil offers profound concepts and profound insights into his thoughts on various moral concepts. He challenges the notion of morality and its potential hindrance to personal improvement, as it tends to equate individuals, thus preventing them from fully realizing their unique abilities. Nietzsche's excerpt delves further into the idea that adhering to moral codes might inhibit growth. In the book, he extensively explores different castes and moral systems, introducing the concepts of master-slave morality, as GN and CJ discussed. Those with master moralities perceive themselves as superior and often reject qualities that those with slave moralities had, and in turn, those with slave moralities also rejected whatever those with master moralities had. Towards the conclusion of Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche critiques Christianity, as I discussed, for its rejection of nature and for being preached by individuals he considered unfit. He emphasizes that abstracting or separating oneself from humanity in pursuit of a purely logical virtue is impossible, since claiming morals to be unemotional is disingenuous. Many of the concepts discussed in Nietzsche's work are considered to be controversial, as we heard CJ talk about, since it was used in many of fascist ideologies. Nonetheless, his writings continue to hold significance and importance in the realm of philosophy.